welcome to the Festival of Storytellers.
I can't tell you how excited I am to be on right now. It's been a couple of weeks of excitement, getting prepared, and I've done a lot of things in my life, but this has got to be close to the top.
Thank you, Reader's Magnet, and thank you, John, for putting this forth and taking the chance on us authors in presenting this out to the world.
I've enjoyed this immensely, Joanne.
Ellie, so have I. Thank you for who you are, and thank you, Reader's Magnet. You all are beautiful, and you've worked so very hard, and we are blessed.
We are.
I thank everybody that's involved with this process, because we know writers need readers and writers need publishers. We thank Reader's Magnet and everybody that's involved. I love Reader's Magnet. They say, we share your stories with the world.
I think we're on.
Welcome to the Festival of Storytellers. My name is Ellie Gassetta, and welcome to the Festival of Storytellers, Chapter 3. I'm here today with Scott Harral. I'd like to talk a moment about the Festival of Storytellers. It has been a 2-week event, and we have today and tomorrow left. I invite everyone to visit the booths and take advantage of the podcast that other authors are making and enjoy our session. I am also a author for Reader's Magnet, and I have 2 books. And my first book is One Caregiver's Journey, and it is about my 9.5 years of caring for my mother in my home as a 24/7 sole caregiver when she broke her hip. And she passed away in my home 5 years ago at the age of 102. And my second book is Generations of Good Food. And it is a compilation of 200 recipes from our Italian family. And my brother calls it the cutest little cookbook on the market for $10. And so with that, we'll go in and talk to Scott. Hello, Scott Harral.
Hello, Ellie.
Nice to see you
good
again.
To talk with you once again. This is it's fantastic. I love our opening credits.
Isn't that
you
nice?
And I are both a part of. It's fantastic.
Yes, it is. You know what? Let's tell our viewers. This is old hat for you and I, but let's tell our viewers about you and about Moonluck. Moonluck is a book that is likely coming in the decades. There will be more active stations permanently located on the moon. Mm-hmm. It's inevitable that human life will be taken by another while people living there in these colonies. Will we be prepared for the first time this occurs? Moonluck is a story of 30 astronauts living on the moon for extended periods of time. It's also a story of the astronaut scientists and astronaut explorers as they grow plants on the moon, explore and find mineral ores, carry out experiments and research, and develop animosities as well as very close relationships. When one of the base's senior member dies in what appears to be an accident, the story follows a trail to discover the actual perpetrator, leaving us with the question, is it murder if it happens on the moon? And our author, Scott Harral, has been around since 1957. In that time, he's done many, many things, and he's been to many, many places. Scott is quite the traveler, I might add. He has a BS and an MS in civil engineering and also an MBA. He has made a career of providing construction management services, mostly to the rail industry throughout the United States. He has also worked in Qatar, in the Middle East, which was truly an eye-opening experience for him to the world. He has traveled extensively. He has visited 40 countries, and I'm sure that number in the 3 years that we have been doing this has grown, Scott.
It's up to 60.
Up to 60. And Scott's wife is an Italian, from Italian descent, and so they have a home and they visit the Alps a couple times a year. Welcome, Scott. So let's talk.
Okay. Well, thank you for that intro.
Thank you, Daryl. Okay. Let's talk about the book, because it is a fiction book, but we've connected it to today's reality, the future of space travel and the potential of international competition to set up space colonies. Doesn't seem like all that fictional anymore. And so tell me how Moonlook, because you put this together, so tell me how Moonlook does this.
Well, as I've told many people, it's classified as science fiction, but there is no fiction in the science. Mm-hmm. It's based on current technology and capability. If I might just back up just a little bit, I just spent 2 days with Reader's Magnet in the New York Library Association's conference and trade show. Mm-hmm. And so I've been talking. In fact, I'm wearing their shirt.
T-shirts. Lucky you! You got a T-shirt for the Empire State Book Tour.
But it was a great experience. But I got a chance to talk to a lot of people and get some good questions. And hopefully, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the things that I shared. But as I said, there's no science. There's no fiction in the science. It's what we have the capability today to go out to the moon. We're working on it right now. What I asked a lot of people, and I'll ask you, and I said, well, why did we go to the moon in the very first place? And rather than put anybody on the spot, I'll just say the answer was we had to beat the Russians. And once we beat the Russians, well, why didn't we go back? Well, there was nobody to beat. And why are we going to go back? We're going to have to beat China. China will be on the moon before us. Mark my words. They're building the development, and they're developing their resources, capabilities. They're already exploring the far side of the moon, which we haven't yet. And I fully expect that they'll be on the moon in living in some capacity very soon. And that's when we will follow up. And a lot of people thought that maybe we didn't go back because we didn't have the money. Well, that's not the case. We have the money. We just don't have the desire. So once China's there, we'll go to beat them. But having said that, people asked, well, how are we going to be able to get along? Well, I absolutely believe that once we're on the moon, and this is very important, Ellie, once we're on the moon with others, we're going to get along just fine.
We won't have a choice.
Well, Yeah, we do have a choice, but we'll choose to get along. I think because of the commonality of living there and the need to get along in order to survive. And I think this is very important, and why it makes this book is very, I think, very important for young readers, young adults, and to understand that this is pretty cultural. The two base stations there, and my take is that when we go, it's not going to be just NASA. It's going to be a joint venture of NASA and European Space Agency and SpaceX and Blue Origin, both companies that people know very much about. And when we get there, we'll work together, but there's going to be animosities because there are the scientists. They're going to have the pure scientists there with the entrepreneurs who are seeking to exploit the resources on the moon. And there are very much so. There's resources on the moon: iron, titanium. There is water there. People thought that we couldn't live on the moon because there wouldn't be water, but there is at the poles, ice. And that, but not only that, that the ice not only provides water, it will also provide oxygen and fuel. We'll be able to generate fuel, create.
How did you get into this? How did you? I mean, first of all, we've got a message from James saying
Okay.
it would be that your trailer would be akin to putting Moonluck into a movie, and that would be pretty cool along the way. But my question to you is,
Yes.
how did you get interested into the moon? You have so much knowledge about this.
Well, that's
How
a
did this
great
become your
question.
passion?
I grew up as a young teenager, very, very, very interested in science fiction. I read Asimov and Heinlein and Clark and the leaders of the time, and of course watched Star Trek and Star Wars. And uh, I've always enjoyed the science fiction. And in fact, at one point about 20 years ago, during Star Trek: The Next Generation, I actually wrote a script for one of their episodes.
Wow.
Yeah, submitted it. They were receptive to it. We're going to look like they were going to use it, but very sadly, the series came to an end, and my story didn't get to be used. But that was my first exposure, and I loved what I had done. It was fun, and I've always been a writer of a technical sense in my work. But the only time I get to be creative is in marketing materials. But I've always had this fascination with the science fiction, and I want to add that because of my exposure working overseas and so many people and traveling, and as I said, I'm now up to 60 countries that I've visited.
Amazing.
I've been exposed to some incredible people and other cultures, and I wanted to bring this together, and it just hit me. I can't tell you what it was, but it hit me that this is what's going to happen. I did a lot of thinking about it, and I fully believe that it's going to be a joint effort to go to the moon. We all know about SpaceX and Blue Origin, what they're doing right now. It's going to happen that way. I've already wrote this book about 2 years ago, and some of the things I predicted are already coming true now, with SpaceX developing its capability to go to the moon. It's out there, so it's
We
going
have
to happen.
a question from Natasha.
Yes.
That Natasha wants to know, what are some of the fascinating and less known facts about the moon, the moons of the solar
Moons
system?
of the solar system. Well, I know I'm assuming you're referring to moons around other planets, and I can have to tell you, I'll be honest with you, I'm not that familiar up to speed. I know they're discovering moons. I believe there's some moons around Uranus right now that they had not seen before, and they're discovering things about the moons around Jupiter. but I'm not so much up to speed to them. I'm focusing on my efforts on our own moon, which is, believe it or not, I capitalize it. People don't realize it's capitalized because the name of our moon is Moon. Other moons out in the other planets around Jupiter, they all have different names. Ours is the name of our moon is just Moon. So people ask me that, why have I capitalized it? That's why. It's actually the name of our moon. But to go back, I've looked at the possibility of what's going to take to go to, say, Mars. A lot of people talk Martian
Mars.
anywhere.
Well, they already have spacecraft heading there or
Yeah,
circling
I got to
there,
be
taking
honest.
pictures. And
It's not going to happen in our lifetime because right now with the current technology, even when the Earth's two orbits of the moon and Earth are, say, this close, there we go, this close, which is their closest point, it would take 9 months to get there. What happens when they start to get apart because they're on different orbits? You're not going to be able to supply and operate. Even communications, when they're still at 9 months apart for travel, it's going to take over a half an hour just to communicate. On the moon, I see things. Yes, the moon doesn't have an atmosphere, but we have ways to get around that, and we can do the supply chain back and forth. We have what they already have that in plan. There's going to be a space platform above anything above that's on the moon. That will be kind of like a logistics center, shall we say. Is it better to build our future bases on the dark side of the moon? Well, if I may offer a correction, there is no dark side. It's just as much light on the far side as there is on the side we see. The dark side of the moon. Well, we can thank Pink Floyd for making that famous. But it's light on both sides.
So you said that China is exploring the dark side of the moon. So what are they exploring
They're
that
exploring
we are
the
not?
far side. They're exploring the far side.
The far side.
And the far side is the side that refers to the part we don't see.
Okay.
It's
That's what
absolutely phenomenal.
Jake may have called the dark side.
Yeah, it's absolutely phenomenal that while the moon rotates, it's also in a rotation around the Earth such that they match, and we only see one side. Ironically, if you were on the moon looking back at the Earth, you would always see, assuming you were on the front, we'll call it the forward side, you would see the Earth in the same place every day, all the time, always be at the same location, and it'd be rotating. So it's kind of, people don't realize that. It'd be kind of interesting. As you know, I'm writing a sequel, and that's going to be something I'm going to address in my sequel. The astronauts romantically gazing at the Earth and seeing that it never moves. So we have another question there. I've been reading your book for a while now. Oh, okay. I'm wondering, how did you come up with the title Moon Luck? Well, if you read the book, if you're into it far enough, at one point we're talking about some of the good things and the bad things that were happening on the station, and somebody, one of my characters says, well, things that happen here, they're not just good luck, they're not just bad luck, it's just moon luck. And I put that in a line, and later on I said, that'd make a good title.
But so you study the Chinese. So have you been to China?
I have been to China.
And you've studied the Chinese because you and I have talked about this earlier in the week, that you maintain China's going to beat us to the moon with these colonies, but then you also know that they are currently doing development. So tell us how you have so many. How many do you have a number? How many are half of the characters in your book Chinese?
No, not really. They're
Are they
involved.
prominent? Are they
I'm sorry.
prominent? Are they
Well, yes,
prominent?
they are prominent. They one of the commander, the commanding officer of the Chinese base station, I indicate, was actually educated in Berkeley, I think, if I recall correctly, and so he's very adept and knowledgeable of
United
U.S.
States.
of the U.S. culture, and I believe he was also in England too. I put that in my book, and so he's a very open-minded person. I truly make them like me because I'm open-minded and it's very acceptable and loving of other cultures. And
Yes.
so I can envision that anybody going there would be the same way. That once we're there, and if I may for just a moment, once we're there on the moon, um, politics will be set aside and people will get along just fine. And somebody asked me during the conference, the trade show, they said, well, how long do you think that's going to last? I said, well, uh, I can't predict. Nobody can predict what's going to happen 50 years from now. But I can tell you from how we've explored the world in the past, and other than the indigenous peoples we've encountered, generally speaking, we've all worked together for one reason or another. But the early explorers of the American continents were both interested in exploitation, trying to find the way to make money from what they thought was the East Indies, and plus the people that wanted to explore and discover, and they worked together. That's going to happen on the moon, at least for the initial development. We're all going to get along just fine.
Well, that happens right now on the International Space Station, where you have not only Americans and Russians, but you do have the Chinese. You have a number of different Japanese, a number of different
Yes.
cultures and people from other countries who are up there working together, and they make it work.
And they have a common purpose and goal, and that's what helps bring everybody together. 50, 100 years after we're there, I can't tell you what's going to happen. Hopefully, we will grow up and do a better job getting along. But
hopefully. What advice do you have for the future writers who look up to you? Daryl wants to know.
Wow. Okay, that's a good one. Writing was the easy part. I will tell you. Look, let's deal with that. Do your research if you're interested in any way representing a factual story. There are science fiction writers out there that go so far in the future they can make up anything they want but if you're gonna write something that's of current times, and I consider my story actually current. I don't consider it that much futuristic. Excuse me. Do some research. I had a spreadsheet and an outline, about 11 pages of outline to outline every single chapter, and I adhered to that pretty much as I was writing it, and that helped me. I had a spreadsheet to keep track of time zones and phases of the moon, everything I talk about in my book.
How did you give your characters in your spreadsheet, or did you have some? I just did a roundtable on developing characters for books this week for Reader's Magnet in the Festival of Storytellers. So do you? And one of the things that we talked about was some people have folders of their characters as they develop their personalities and develop their quirks. Did you put those in your? Did you put
spreadsheet?
Those in, or did you just kind of? How did you come up with your 30 characters?
Well, actually, there's about it's 30 people on the base station, but there's like 44 different characters altogether because I deal with the Chinese base station, of the bases on the mission centers that are on Houston and Darmstadt, Germany, and I forget the name of the place in China where they're originally. So I have characters on Earth as well, and the company headquarters of Blue Origin and SpaceX. I talk about that. So the characters, this is because of my background of having been out in the world. My characters are people in my life. Almost every single one of them, with two exceptions for sure. The murderer and the victim were nobody I knew. I didn't want that to be associated with anybody I knew. But everybody else of any significance in my book is somebody in my life, and it could be somebody that I have friends that I know from Greece, from Italy, from Hungary, from Czech Republic, and of course here in the United States. And these are all people I've met while working and visiting overseas. So all I had to do was associate one of these people in my life with a character, and the rest was easy because I knew these people. There was no way I was going to get them wrong because I knew I was writing about people I knew. I just put them in a spacesuit or in a different job. So that was the easy part.
You talk about commercial mining, and you talk about minerals and what are on the moon. How would they get those back here? How do they live and how would they mine them? I mean that takes. What kind of would they have to develop equipment? Okay, so here we go.
Okay, all right. You're delving into my second book.
Oh,
I'm going to be talking about it more extensively in my second book.
Okay,
about mining. It's going to be a very important about the equipment that you mentioned. It's going to be a critical element. And I'll throw out a little teaser. My second book won't be a murder mystery. It's going to be a rescue mission because another thing that happens on the moon people may not be aware of, they have moonquakes. They're like our earthquakes, only much worse.
Really?
And I'll just leave it at that.
Is that a fact, or is that something you just decided?
It's part of my research. What's going on? I was looking for something to carry my second story, and I ran across this idea, something I'd read, and I'm following up on it. So my second story is going to involve a moonquake. And I'll just leave it at that. We'll have a third base station, by the way. I will say it's going to be a joint venture between India and Israel. Will be the third base station. Both countries currently have space programs, but they're not an integral part of the current European operations in our operation. So they're going to do a joint venture together to go together. And I've talked to people and they say, "Oh yeah, that's quite plausible." So there you go.
So J.K. wants to know, which character do you have the most fun writing about?
Well, I had a very good friend that when I was working in Qatar, she was from Hungary, and she's one of the characters in my book, and I focused on her as one of the prime characters because of her characteristics, and they're very prominent. She was a very outgoing, outspoken person, very intelligent, and she was perfect for one of the parts of my character, one of the characters in my book. And the second one and her name was Cormendi. Her real name, I won't use her real name, but I modify it slightly, and I do that in all cases. I modify people's names, except for one. Let me backtrack. Another good friend of mine, his name is Lucas Anagnostopoulos. He's one of the, try saying that. Yes, wonderful guy. He actually asked me to use his real name, so I did.
So did you ask these people if you could include them in your book? Or did you just...
I informed them, and I told them in all cases that I was not using their real names. And then that's when Lucas said, "Oh no, please use my real name. I want." So I did. But and the reason I didn't necessarily ask is because I'm not using their full real names. They're I don't really need their permission per se.
Okay.
And don't get me wrong, but if I went around asking to use them, then I might not be able. It might have taken me a lot longer to do it.
How long did it take you to write? How long did it take you to write?
Believe it or not, it only took me 6 months to write my book.
Wow, that's pretty quick. Good.
Yeah, it took me a whole lot longer to try to get it published. Yes, but writing it was good.
That's super. So let's go back and talk about the minerals. Tell me about the kind of minerals that you know that are on the moon.
Okay, titanium. Titanium is on the moon. What they know now makes it very difficult to extract because it's almost in the form of dust. So they will have to develop something that can extract it, but that's not beyond our means. Iron ore is prolific there, and as I mentioned, and most importantly, there's ice, which near the poles, which is going to be essential not only for water, basic water, but for helping to generate our oxygen and also to generate fuel.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And Hope, you asked me, how do we get it back? I forgot. I kind of got sidetracked. One way, and this is not based on anything I know, this is just my supposition, but I see it very plausible that we'll just, once we get it up to Gateway, which is the orbiting platform, you can just launch that material towards the Earth, and then it gets to the other end, and somebody will collect it.
How would you know where it's going to land?
Well,
how would you know where it's land? I mean, they're going
it'll be collected before it reaches the atmosphere by a ship around the Earth.
By who?
Sorry?
By who?
By SpaceX, Blue Origin, other companies.
Really?
Oh yeah, they'll launch their spaceships that will go just to the upper part of the atmosphere, be there ready to collect the materials, that are coming. They'll be contained. It won't be like they're just open, but maybe we take them. We fill a module, and this is how we're going to do this. By the way, another question that was asked is, how are we going to build? Are we going to build a base station on there? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to build modules and bring the modules to the moon and set them down and build them and connect them together until we get enough of them that we have our base station. Well, those same container type principle will be used to ship materials back towards Earth.
So
once they're in space and moving, they don't need rockets or anything. Maybe minor rockets to keep them on course, but generally they're just going to go on their own. That's what I envision.
They'll be living in prefab.
Yep, prefabbed housing. That's what we're going to be living in at the beginning.
Wow. This is just unbelievably fascinating. I invite our audience to jump in and give us some questions.
Any other questions?
Give us some questions and give us some information. Now, tell me about. I've got a couple questions about your travels.
Okay.
Talk about. I do know that you have taken a cruise around the world. Tell me about the cultures and what you learned in the months that you were gone. I mean, what did you?
Oh my gosh, yeah. The unfortunately didn't quite make it around the world because of the pandemic, but we left on a 4.5 month cruise on Christmas Eve this past year. Christmas Eve out of Fort Lauderdale, and came down through Panama Canal and right back up here to LA where I live, and because of the pandemic and the concerns, I couldn't even get off the ship in my own city. And we were supposed to go west from there to Hawaii and then down to the French Polynesian Islands and New Zealand and then into Thailand, Cambodia. And unfortunately, that got canceled. But it was okay. We went totally south along the South American, around the South American continent. And I got to see Chile and explore that. Fantastic. Uruguay. We went around Cape Horn, and it was fantastic. And then from there, from Uruguay, we went just slightly a little bit northeast, and started to hit the other side, the other hemisphere there, and hit a little island called Cabo Verde, and well, actually it's a country of small islands right off of Senegal. Madeira, and then we basically from almost 3 months were within the Mediterranean or thereabouts, going all over the place. We hit places like Saudi Arabia. In fact, we were actually the very, very first cruise ship ever to dock in Saudi Arabia. It was a big deal. We went to Egypt, got to see all the ancient pyramids and ruins of Egypt. Went to Jordan. I rode a camel in front of the Petra, the treasury, and then along that coast of Israel, we hit Croatia. Well, I've been to Croatia several times actually.
Sure.
And then Montenegro and down along that coast. Turkey, and by the way, I like to say that Turkey in Istanbul are the most polite people I've ever encountered consistently. Phenomenal people, just very, very polite. And when I worked in the Middle East, another thing I like to say is I tell people, whatever you think you know about the Middle East, forget it. You only hear the bad stuff in the news. They are wonderful people. They're just as wholesome and loving and caring as anybody else. They just have a different way of living. That's all. So not one word we may be used to, but if you go with an open mind, the world is a fantastic place.
Wow.
So went more of the Mediterranean. Italy, I've been to, obviously
a lot.
Home there. So then Spain, Portugal, Gibraltar was an experience. I love Portugal. Fantastic. I highly recommend that for anybody traveling. And then I finished up in England.
Okay, James, put your question back up again.
Well, yeah, it was a big one there. I saw that.
Yeah, it was. Okay, James says your book is science fiction, but you believe the science behind your book is factual.
Oh, I don't believe it. I know it.
Okay, so what's the percent of the book that we should consider science, and what's the percent that is fiction? And James is excited to find out what technical devices you've tried to predict would become a reality. Oh,
okay, so there is a little, I'd say, okay, to be fair, to answer this question, I would say 97% of the science that I talk about in my book is current. We can go to the moon today. We have that knowledge and capability and live there. I did extrapolate a few things. I talk about a sound system that one of the astronauts uses that totally encloses the sound around her head as in her environment, and it can't be heard. It basically is not heard, nor does it disturb any of the other astronauts. That's an extrapolation of something I know that's in process of being developed. But I talk extensively about growing plants on the moon, which, by the way, is absolutely essential if we're going to survive. We're going to have plants. I talk about I did extensive research on this. There are plants, there's 19 species that NASA has identified that are not only prolific in generating oxygen, and converting our carbon dioxide, converting it to oxygen. But they're also prolific in cleaning and detoxifying the air, because as humans, we don't just expel carbon dioxide, we expel a few other things, and that all needs to be cleaned. And plants are more efficient at doing that than the mechanical devices we would create. So I talk a bit about that, but I do it in a manner that makes it of interest. It's not a science report. It comes out in the story, so to speak.
So,
And that's just one example. Let me, if I may,
absolutely.
And this is why I think it's very good for young people, this story. On the space station, I don't think people are too aware of it, but the International Space Station is affiliated with several high schools. And those high schools' science classes are able to design and ask astronauts on the space station to conduct experiments for them, space experiments for the classes in the high schools. Well, I've extrapolated that and have a class do an experiment on the moon at the base station that deals with gravity, and it's a way that I show how gravity truly affects is different on the moon and how it affects you. And so it was a way to bring in a little bit of a younger generation. So I have a question here. Are you going to explore interplanetary travel in the book anytime soon? No. Well, that's not true. I take that back. I am gonna, in my sequel, I am sending a spaceship to Mars, but with astronauts, but not with the intent of inhabiting. It'd be the first step towards exploring Mars. I don't see inhabiting Mars anytime in the near future, within the next 50 years. It's just not possible. What's
your favorite part of the book? What's your favorite part of the book?
What's the favorite part? I'll tell you what. As I said, it was a murder mystery. I was crying when I was writing when it got solved. When I started talking about, and I can't tell you why, because one of the things I like when somebody's reading, I say, try to figure out who the murderer is. But when I finally reveal it and the way I do it, that to me, I was very proud of myself. It really came out well. It was one of my favorite parts. It was the very end of the book. Also though, another favorite part is the absolute ending, which is the funeral services for the astronaut that had been killed, and they have a funeral service that is, and I will share this. There's a simultaneous service conducted at Arlington National Cemetery, and I have, and this is fully capable science, lasers that are shot from the moon, a laser light that arrives at the Arlington National Space Center, Arlington National Cemetery. It's very dramatic in the way I presented that. So those two parts were my favorite part of the book. But all my book is favorite. every part of my book is my favorite.
So Daryl, I believe that was Daryl. His question was, what advice would you have to young writers? Your younger writing self. If you were going to tell your younger writing self anything, what would it be?
Plan it. Lay it out, outline it, make sure you know exactly where you want the story to go, and stick to it as best you can. That helped me so much to have it already planned out. So know where your story's going to go before you start writing. That's the ultimate. Don't write with the intent of trying to go make a fortune.
It's not going to happen.
It ain't gonna happen. Write because you love
We
it.
both
It's a
know that.
passion.
Yes.
You and I know this. We write because of it's a passion.
Well,
And,
it is a passion, but self self-published authors, we cannot compete with the authors who, like J.K. Rowling or Danielle Steele or Patterson, who have, when you walk through the grocery stores, they have a new book on the shelf every month. So these are people
Yeah.
who are writing
Yeah.
or have writers writing. So we can't compete with that.
Well,
But
let's
you have to
compare.
get your story out.
Right.
And that's
Let's compare those writers you just mentioned with some of the football players or baseball players that are making millions because of who they are. They are one fraction of a percentage of all athletes that are out there,
right.
and all athletes.
Absolutely. Yeah, okay.
And that while everybody would like to aspire to be one of those fantastically famous, wealthy athletes, that's not the goal of being an athlete, and it shouldn't be a goal of being a book writer for the same reason.
So
Right?
Margaret
Because
wants to know. So let's.
Yes.
You're right, and you and I have talked about this on the telephone before, so we know this. Margaret wants to know, if you were a botanist and you were going to the moon or Mars as an astronaut, what kind of research project would you develop? What did you have the botanists in your book develop on the moon?
There's,
Were
like
they
you said,
mining, or did they raise plants?
Plants are going to be very much absolutely essential part of any space development, any long-term presence. Absolutely essential. So the plants, obviously, what do? They produce, as I mentioned earlier, they produce oxygen, take away carbon dioxide. They detoxify the air, and then of course they produce food. Well, some plants, they know that without the restriction of gravity or reduced gravity that the moon would be, they're going to grow bigger. And because they're growing bigger under certain conditions, they're going to be more prolific in the food they produce. One of the things that's going to be in my second book that I've since learned is, for example, in Netherlands, where they have a lot of overcast, they're developing internal greenhouse systems using purple light in lieu of sunlight, that they're finding great success in growing lettuce.
Oh yeah, no,
It's phenomenal.
we do that here right now, and a lot of the hydroponic farms use the blue lights. Right.
So yes, there's that science out there that we don't have to have an open sky for all plants. We just for the certain plants we can grow them, and they'll be just fine. In fact, absolutely essential for our existence on the moon or any place else.
So JK wants to know, how long do you think it will take us to terraform the moon?
Form the moon. Good question. Well, how long did it take us to develop the United States from the time it was first explored? We all say 1492 when Columbus came, but actually it was discovered long before that, and it was hundreds and hundreds of years. Well, okay, the moon won't take that long, but first of all, we're going to have to go underground. We're going to have to, in my opinion, we're going to have to go underground to develop caverns that we can fully insulate so that we can provide oxygen. We don't want to go throughout life in our spacesuits. We want to be able to have something that we can live openly in, and I think we're going to have to go underground to do that. So I see that happening. So terraforming, I don't know how long it would take to actually develop an atmosphere on the moon, but it's not going to be overnight, and I don't think it's going to be in 100 years. I think as I said, we'll have to go underground if we're going to expand, and and that's going to be part of our future. Our future is more than just the moon. For our continued existence, we're going to go under the water. We're going to go undersea, and we're going to go underground on Earth. And that knowledge will be extrapolated and taken to the moon as we go underground on the moon. That's what I see in the future.
Romeo Ralph wants to know, can you describe your writing space?
I'm not sure I understand the question. My writing space? Or you mean when I'm writing here at home, if I'm writing? Well, you're looking at it. This is where I wrote much of the book. Sitting right here in front of my computer.
This is it.
So you get to see it. I did do a lot of it elsewhere. I started writing my second book. Got first 6 chapters written while I was there on that round the world cruise during our sea days.
Something to do.
Yeah. So my writing space, if that's what you were asking about, where do I write? Where I can be a quick access to my research and materials that I want to reference. I don't want to go looking for it.
Okay, so
hopefully that answers the question.
For those of you who are following us, we have nine more minutes, and so where's your next trip? I'm curious.
My next trip?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
you don't stay home very much.
No. Christmas we'll be spending a week with our son and daughter-in-law and new baby granddaughter.
You got a new
live
baby.
In North Carolina. We'll be there for about 11 days, 16th through the 25th December.
Good.
But after when we the next lengthy trip, and actually be the longest now, we will be spending 2 months in Italy. Going mid-February for something called Carnivale, which I've been an active part of there. And so mid-February to mid-April, I think I'm planning on coming back around tax day, give or take. We'll be spending 2 months in Italy, but from there, even when we're there, we're going to go explore parts of Italy that we haven't seen before. Puglia. My wife wants to go down south to Puglia. We'll have friends that are coming. They want to go up in the Alps and go into Switzerland, so we're going to take them there. For those who don't know, my wife was born in the Italian Alps, and we have a home there. And we're about an hour and a half south of the Swiss border, Great St. Bernard Pass. And from our balcony, we can see into France.
Oh, your balcony. I don't know if the fairgoers had an opportunity to see Scott's pre-TPOS interview, the interview that he pretty much had to do himself because there was nobody to do it with him. But he did show a picture. He did this entire interview off of the balcony of this house and showed the expanse. It was super. I hope you're around in June and maybe we can meet in person.
Yes,
at the Chicago American Library Association. That would be a lot of fun. So we're going to do one. We're going to do one last question, and then Scott and I are going to talk about Reader's Magnet.
Okay.
So your science fiction novel is mixed with mystery and thriller. Do you have a plan to explore more about writing mystery or suspense, and what would make us excited to read your sequel? Just Scott would make you excited to read your sequel.
Okay, well, I use mystery, thriller, murder mystery, whatever, as the vehicle to carry the story, and people love a good murder mystery. And I use that to carry the story because my real goal was to talk about what it takes to live on the moon and what living on the moon would be like amongst a group of 30 astronauts. So the murder part was very much the vehicle. In my sequel, as I already mentioned, I'm going to be looking at a moonquake occurring, which will cause some damage to a base station, such that there has to be a rescue mission. Okay, there's my vehicle. And we'll talk about what it takes to do a rescue that is going to be totally unique from anything else that's like that you've read about here on Earth. I'm doing a different approach. And I've given some clues out even in this talk, but I doubt it was enough clues that you can figure out how I'm going to do it.
So with that, we have about 4 minutes left, Scott.
Okay.
I'd like us to take an opportunity to.
Sure.
You just went to the Empire State
Mm-hmm.
Book Fair. You went to the one in Saratoga Springs. Last week
Mm-hmm.
was in Tribeca, Manhattan,
Yep.
New York. I would like to, since we only have today and tomorrow.
Yeah.
For the Festival of Storytellers, Chapter 3, I would like to give some gratitude to the support that Reader's Magnet gives to us
Yes.
authors and allows us to. This particular format is designed strictly for authors. This particular format, the Festival of Storytellers, is an opportunity for we authors to showcase our work. In these sessions, to showcase your persona, your book, your brand, for people to get to know us, for people to ask us questions. I think it's an extraordinary. Now, you went to New York. I have been to LA. I've been to Tucson with Reader's Magnet, and those are primarily designed for the publishers. Although Reader's Magnet had a ton of books, they brought a lot of authors' books with them.
Yes, they did.
And they are a little different in these formats in that they allow people to come in and peruse the books and look at them and answer questions, and their staff is very knowledgeable about all of the material. I just think they're a great company to work with. Tell me how they've helped you. They've helped me significantly, but tell me how.
They're aggressive. They're constantly calling me, and I want to, but in a very positive way. I want to thank the team that I've worked with. I take this opportunity to thank Kim Bassett. His predecessor Mario was very good. I understand he had medical issues, but Kim's did a good job taking over, and affiliated with him is John Ocampo. Thank you, John. Thank you, Kim. By the way, John, copy of the book. I signed a copy of the book for you. It's coming your way. Kim, you're going to get a hat. One of my hats here, so you got that coming. And by the way, I don't even think I did this. I was supposed to do this.
Oh, you didn't show? Yeah, show us your book. You've been talking about it for
I know. There
almost an hour now. There is Moonlight, y'all.
There's a person there. I want to see if I can get it. Oh,
and
okay. That really is me.
There's a Scott Harral 20 years ago with dark hair.
Yeah. These guys, Reader's Magnet, really, they're like you said, they're aggressive. I was started off with a different self-publishing company, and
I did too.
I'm not satisfied. I was not satisfied. I won't say who, but I'm abandoning that. These guys are really trying to make a difference, and they were also, by the way, very open to some ideas I had, because what we need to do to truly get out there and get our books sold. And again, like I said, I'm not writing to make money, but I got to make some sales, or my book's not getting out there. So, well, and you know
my genre of caregiving and a cookbook, I don't quite have that same issue, but okay. What I have discovered is, my webpage is exciting. I just think Reader's Magnet has done a remarkable job. They've allowed us authors to do to showcase ourselves, to showcase our work. And I have so enjoyed talking with you again today, Scott.
Yes, me too, Ellie, and I look forward to it.
And I look forward to meeting you at some point. And
Yeah.
you know what? That's our hour. So
yeah, right on.
So everybody, please stay well, be safe, and from Scott and I, ciao for now.
Ciao, ci vediamo.